The corridors of the palace were unusually silent that evening. The grand halls bathed in the amber glow of fading sunlight. Thomas Hale, veteran guard and longtime protector of the royal family, moved with deliberate precision, boots muted against the polished marble floors. Every corner, every archway, every flicker of candlelight could conceal secrets or threats. His sharp eyes caught the subtle quiver of curtains in the draft, the faint glimmer of a misplaced document, the hesitant shuffle of palace staff. Tonight, Thomas's instincts whispered, something was about to unfold that would test loyalty, courage, and the very foundation of the crown. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, had requested his presence in the private study, a room seldom used except for confidential affairs. Thomas's mind raced, weighing the possible reasons for the summons. The prince had been increasingly vigilant in recent weeks, monitoring palace operations with a meticulous attention to detail. Rumors of missing documents and secretive staff movements had reached his ears, and his concern for the integrity of the royal household was palpable. Thomas knew that William's investigation was both delicate and fraught with potential peril. Even a single misstep could compromise the family's trust or reputation. The private study was located in a secluded wing, accessible only through a series of narrow corridors and guarded doors. Thomas led the way, keeping a careful watch over every shadow, every flicker of movement beyond the walls, the faint hum of activity in the servants' quarters, the distant echo of boots against marble, even the subtle scent of polished wood and waxed floors, all were meticulously catalogued in his mind. To a casual observer, the palace appeared serene, orderly, and flawless. To Thomas, however, each detail could mask a secret, a threat, or a betrayal. Prince William waited near the ornate desk, his posture tense, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the room like a hawk, assessing its domain. The prince's gaze fell on Thomas as he entered, a mixture of trust and expectation evident in the subtle tightness of his jaw. "Thomas," he said, voice low and controlled, "I have reason to believe someone within the staff has been concealing something critical, something that could jeopardize the crown itself." The weight of his words pressed heavily in the room, as if the walls themselves absorbed their gravity. Thomas nodded, understanding immediately that this was no ordinary breach of protocol. This was a matter of potential catastrophe. The prince continued, "I need absolute discretion, absolute vigilance. We cannot allow panic, but we must uncover the truth before it spreads." His voice, though calm, carried an undercurrent of urgency. Thomas acknowledged with a subtle nod. He had served the royal household through decades of ceremony, scandal, and crisis. He understood the stakes. Loyalty was paramount, but so was moral clarity. Protecting the family sometimes required confronting uncomfortable truths, even when they originated from within. The study itself was a study in opulence, gilded and polished, lined with shelves of ancient tomes, illuminated manuscripts, and historical artifacts that chronicled the lineage of the monarchy. Yet beneath the grandeur, Thomas's trained eyes searched for anomalies, loose papers, disturbed dust, subtle signs of tampering. The prince gestured toward a small pile of correspondence and ledgers that had been placed carefully on the desk. "These are recent records," he explained, "but I've noticed discrepancies. Something or someone has manipulated the documents. We must identify the source before any damage occurs." Thomas stepped closer, gloved hands brushing lightly over the polished surface, scanning the records with meticulous care. He noted immediately that the papers had been reordered, their sequence disrupted in a manner that suggested intentional concealment rather than accident. The margins bore faint traces of ink that seemed unfamiliar, letters slightly misaligned, evidence that someone had attempted to alter or hide information. His pulse quickened. Whoever had done this was clever, precise, and perhaps dangerous if discovered. Footsteps approached from the corridor outside, soft but deliberate. Thomas's head snapped toward the sound, eyes narrowing. The staff, moving as though part of the palace's silent machinery, were unaware that the prince and his guard were scrutinizing the records. Thomas's instincts, honed through decades of vigilance, told him that one of these staff members could be the culprit, or at the very least, hold critical knowledge. The faint shuffle of robes, the rustle of papers, and the nearly imperceptible hesitation in a young aide's step all suggested that the room's calm facade was on the brink of collapse. Prince William's gaze followed Thomas's subtle movements, his expression sharpening. "I want this handled quietly, Thomas," he said. "If any staff member realizes we are aware, they may attempt to destroy evidence or flee. We must be methodical, patient, and prepared to act instantly." The prince's words resonated with authority, yet there was an unspoken reliance on Thomas's experience. The veteran guard understood perfectly. Tonight, his role was not only to observe but to intervene decisively should the situation demand it. A faint sound drew Thomas's attention, the soft creak of floorboards behind the heavy velvet curtains. His body tensed, instincts coiling like springs. He advanced subtly, moving without drawing notice, eyes trained on the shadows. The faint glow of candlelight revealed a figure bending near a side table, hands rifling through a stack of papers, with an urgency that betrayed desperation. Thomas's mind raced, cataloging every detail: the trembling of the hands, the careful placement of documents into a hidden folder, the precise but hurried movements, all indicators of guilt. He signaled to the prince with a subtle nod. William's eyes followed, narrowing as he observed the unfolding scene. Thomas's voice, low and commanding, cut through the silence. "Stop where you are," he said. The figure froze, almost imperceptibly, as though caught in a moment suspended in time. The air in the room seemed to thicken, tension vibrating across the polished surfaces and gilded shelves. Whoever was rifling through the documents now faced the full weight of royal authority, and Thomas's presence made it unmistakably clear that escape or deception was no longer an option. The culprit turned, eyes wide, pale with the sudden realization of being caught. Thomas stepped forward, posture rigid but non-threatening, every motion controlled. "You have been discovered," he said calmly, voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. "The prince is aware, and so am I. Do not attempt to move, destroy evidence, or flee. One wrong action now, and the consequences will be severe." The staff member's lips trembled, but no sound emerged. The gravity of the situation had settled over the room like a heavy cloak, suffocating in its intensity. Prince William rose from his chair, his expression a mixture of authority, disappointment, and the careful control of anger. "Explain yourself," he commanded, voice firm, echoing through the opulent study. The figure swallowed nervously, eyes darting between the prince and Thomas, understanding that every second of hesitation compounded the severity of their exposure. The hidden document, the one capable of unraveling trust within the palace, remained untouched but fully revealed in intent. Its concealment alone was proof enough of the potential for disaster. Thomas remained close, alert, ready to step between the staff member and any impulsive action. His years of service had taught him that such moments were delicate. One wrong movement, one poorly measured word could escalate quickly. Yet he also understood the importance of moral clarity. Protecting the crown, the prince, and the integrity of the royal family required courage, precision, and an unwavering commitment to duty. The tension in the study was nearly unbearable. Every breath, every faint shuffle, every subtle flicker of candlelight carried weight. Thomas's hand hovered lightly near the ceremonial sword at his side, not in aggression, but as a reminder of authority, presence, and readiness. The staff member's eyes flicked toward the weapon, a silent acknowledgement of the boundaries that had been crossed and the authority now confronting them. The prince's voice cut through the growing tension. "This document," he said slowly, each word measured, "is not simply a sheet of paper. It carries implications that affect this household and the responsibilities connected to it. Your handling of it could lead to significant complications. Do you understand the seriousness of this matter?" The staff member's shoulders sank, the weight of the moment evident. Thomas stood steady beside him, a calm but authoritative presence, prepared to support the prince should the situation require firmer guidance. Outside, the palace corridors were still, shadows stretching into silence. The study, once a sanctuary of records and quiet, had become a stage for revelation, authority, and moral confrontation. Thomas Hale, veteran guard, knew that the coming moments would determine not only the fate of the hidden document but also the trust, safety, and cohesion of the royal household. The balance of duty, loyalty, and justice rested squarely on his shoulders, and he was prepared to act decisively. Thomas Hale remained poised, every nerve alert, his gloved hands lightly brushing the polished surface of the desk. The staff member, young and trembling, attempted to conceal the folder containing the hidden document, but the veteran guard's eyes had tracked every movement with unerring precision. Thomas knew that tonight, more than ever, he could not afford hesitation. The slightest misstep might allow critical secrets to escape the palace walls, and the consequences could shake the foundation of the royal family. Prince William's expression was taut, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the room for further irregularities. He stepped closer to the desk, careful not to startle the staff member. "I need you to be completely honest," he said quietly but firmly. "What is in that folder, and why were you attempting to conceal it?" The staff member's lips parted, fear evident, but no words emerged. Thomas noted every flicker of expression, every micro-movement, the way their shoulders trembled and their fingers twitched nervously near the edge of the folder. Then came the first subtle disturbance. A faint scuff of boots echoed from the corridor outside the study. Thomas's head snapped toward the sound. It was soft, deliberate, almost casual, yet his instincts told him it was anything but innocent. Someone else moved through the palace at this hour, perhaps unaware of the scrutiny already unfolding in the private study. Thomas's eyes narrowed. Every sound, every shift of shadow was potentially significant. A misstep now could allow additional staff, or worse, someone with intent to sabotage, to intervene before the hidden document's fate was secured. The staff member's gaze flickered toward the corridor. Thomas noted the reaction instantly. Fear mixed with anticipation. Their eyes were drawn to the sound, their hesitation betraying that they had not expected to be discovered this early. Thomas took a subtle step forward, placing himself between the young aide and the path to the door, a silent warning. The prince's eyes followed the movement, sharp and calculating. Together, they formed an unspoken shield, ensuring that no one could leave the room without acknowledgement, no secret escape without observation. A faint rustle came from a nearby bookshelf, almost imperceptible, yet Thomas noticed immediately. A small stack of ledgers shifted slightly, likely disturbed by a passing draft, but the timing was suspicious. He approached cautiously, eyes scanning the shelves, fingertips lightly grazing the bindings to detect any hidden compartments or irregularities. It was then that he noticed the subtle misalignment of a book, slightly protruding from its row. Thomas's pulse tightened. That single deviation, almost invisible to the untrained eye, suggested another layer of concealment, a hidden space or compartment that could harbor additional documents, or perhaps a tool used to manipulate the contents of the hidden folder. Prince William leaned closer to Thomas, his voice low and deliberate. "Do you notice that?" he asked, indicating the slightly protruding book. Thomas nodded, subtle acknowledgement, aware that the prince was relying on his decades of experience to interpret these quiet signals. The staff member, oblivious to the significance, continued to tremble, hands hovering near the folder. Thomas's instincts screamed that every second counted, that even a minor distraction could allow the staff member to destroy evidence or mislead the investigation. Footsteps approached again, softer this time, echoing faintly in the corridor beyond the study door. Thomas's eyes flicked to the door, narrowing in focus. The palace, normally a bastion of order and routine, now seemed alive with tension, each sound magnified, each shadow potentially concealing intent. He could feel the atmosphere tighten, a pressure building that seemed to press against the walls, the shelves, and even the prince's rigid posture. Every instinct screamed vigilance. Every experience demanded readiness to act. Suddenly, the staff member made a subtle movement toward the folder, a slight attempt to shield it from view. But Thomas's reaction was immediate. He stepped forward, voice calm yet firm. "Do not move that folder," he said, eyes locked on the young aide. The staff member froze, a flicker of panic passing across their face. Thomas's steady presence conveyed authority without aggression, a reminder that escape, concealment, or deception was no longer possible. The prince's gaze hardened, his voice controlled yet carrying unmistakable weight. "We are aware of every action," William said. "Attempting to hide, remove, or alter the contents of that folder will only worsen your situation. Explain yourself now. The tension in the room thickened, almost suffocating. Thomas observed every micro-expression, every twitch, every subtle gesture. The staff members' fear was genuine, their hesitation signaling knowledge of the gravity of the concealed document. Another subtle disturbance followed a flicker of candlelight, a shadow stretching across the walls, and then the faint, metallic click of the folder being shifted on the desk. Thomas's head snapped toward the sound. He caught the precise moment. The aide attempted to reposition it for concealment. His hand moved instantly, resting lightly on the folder, securing it without alarming the prince or drawing undue attention. Every second mattered. One wrong move could destroy the evidence, and the hidden document could be lost forever. The young aide's eyes darted from Thomas to the prince, realization dawning that they had been fully observed. Panic, regret, and fear mingled across their features. Thomas, aware of the fragile balance, adjusted his stance, ensuring he maintained control without escalating the situation. His presence, calm yet unwavering, served as both shield and moral compass, preventing the young staff member from making an impulsive or destructive decision. Prince William's expression softened slightly, though his voice remained firm. "We are not here to humiliate you," he said. "But the crown depends on transparency and integrity. That document is critical. Any attempt to manipulate, hide, or remove it compromises the palace and the family. You must answer honestly." The aide's hands trembled near the folder, and Thomas noted every nuance: the hesitation, the nervous shifting of weight, the subtle intake of breath. The gravity of the moment was inescapable. Thomas's instincts warned him that the situation was far from resolved. The subtle disturbances, the misaligned book, the shifting folder, the quiet movement in the corridor indicated that the hidden document might be only part of a larger scheme. Each anomaly hinted at additional threats, potentially more dangerous than a single staff member's desperation. The palace itself seemed alive with tension, every corridor and shadow a potential stage for betrayal or revelation. The staff member finally spoke, voice barely audible, trembling yet defiant. I didn't mean any harm," they whispered. "I was told to move the documents, to ensure I didn't know the consequences." Thomas maintained his vigilant stance, hand lightly resting on the folder to prevent any further movement. He could see the conflict in their eyes, fear, guilt, and the dawning understanding that the magnitude of their actions could reach far beyond their intentions. Prince William stepped forward, hands resting lightly on the desk. "Intentions matter little if actions endanger the crown," he said. "We must understand the full scope of what has been done. Tell us everything." The staff member swallowed, nodding shakily, the hidden document lying untouched on the desk, now fully exposed under the watchful eyes of both the prince and the veteran guard. Outside, the palace remained silent, corridors stretching into shadows, echoing faint footsteps and whispered secrets. Inside, the tension had shifted but not dissipated. Thomas Hale knew that the situation, though momentarily stabilized, remained perilous. Subtle disturbances had revealed deeper concerns. The hidden document's significance was clear, but additional layers of secrecy could still emerge. The palace had yet to fully reveal its vulnerabilities, and Thomas's vigilance would be required to navigate the shadows ahead. The air in the private study had grown thick with tension, almost suffocating in its intensity. Thomas Hale remained poised, every sense attuned to the smallest disturbance. The staff member, pale and trembling, had revealed fragments of their actions, but Thomas could tell that not all truths had yet been spoken. The hidden document, lying openly on the polished desk, carried a weight far beyond mere paper. It was a key to secrets capable of destabilizing the royal household. The Prince of Wales, jaw tight and eyes flashing with controlled anger, leaned closer, ready to confront the reality of betrayal within his own palace. Suddenly, a sharp shuffle echoed from the corridor beyond the study door. Thomas's hand moved instinctively toward the hilt of his ceremonial sword, though he did not draw it. The sound was deliberate, almost taunting, signaling that another presence had entered the palace unnoticed. Thomas's instincts, honed over decades, told him that someone else was involved, someone who might act to seize or destroy the document if left unchecked. Every heartbeat pulsed with urgency. Every breath in the room seemed to carry weight, as if the walls themselves sensed the impending revelation. The staff members' eyes widened, panic flickering across their features. "It's not just me," they stammered, voice trembling. "There are others. They've instructed me to hide this, to move it. They said if it's discovered, it could ruin everything." Thomas's eyes narrowed, scanning their expression for deception. The fear was genuine, but the hesitation suggested more layers to the conspiracy than a simple act of negligence or misjudgment. Prince William's expression darkened, jaw clenching as the implications crystallized. The palace, long thought orderly and loyal, was now revealed as a stage for hidden intrigue. Thomas took a deliberate step forward, positioning himself between the young aide and the desk. His presence radiated authority and vigilance. "Who else is involved?" he demanded, voice firm yet controlled. "Names, actions, every detail. The crown's integrity depends on your honesty now." The staff member swallowed, trembling violently, and slowly, reluctantly, began to speak, their words hesitant but damning. Instructions had come from a senior aide, someone with access to sensitive information, someone willing to risk the consequences to manipulate events in secrecy. Prince William's eyes darkened with both disappointment and resolve. "We will confront them," he said, tone low and deliberate. "But first, this document must remain secure." Thomas nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. The hidden folder could not leave the desk, could not be moved, and could not fall into the hands of anyone not authorized. Every instinct and training he possessed converged into a single, unyielding focus: protect the document at all costs. Another subtle movement drew Thomas's attention, a shadow, slipping just beyond the doorway, fleeting but deliberate. He pivoted silently, hand resting lightly but firmly on the folder, eyes locked on the corridor. A figure, partially concealed by the dim light, was attempting to enter the room, likely unaware of the scrutiny already in play. Thomas's pulse tightened. He recognized the subtle intention. The intruder sought to seize the document or intimidate the staff member into silence. His stance shifted, precise and controlled, a silent warning that any attempt to act without permission would be met with immediate resistance. Prince William rose slightly from his chair, placing his hand on the desk, steadying himself as he observed the room. "We need full transparency," he said, voice resonating with authority. "The crown cannot afford deception or partial truths. Explain the actions of the others." The young aide's lips quivered, and Thomas noted every micro-expression, the flicker of guilt, the hesitation of fear, the dawning understanding that concealment was no longer an option. The conspiracy, once hidden in shadows, was beginning to reveal its contours. Suddenly, the intruder stepped forward, hands raised slightly in a gesture meant to calm. But Thomas's eyes narrowed. Every movement was calculated, every step deliberate. The figure, a mid-level aide with access to the archives, had attempted to manipulate the document's placement, perhaps to remove it entirely from the study. Thomas's hand hovered near their wrist, a poised intervention designed to prevent further action without immediate confrontation. "Step back," he said firmly. "The document remains here, and no one moves without authorization." The aide froze, understanding the full weight of his presence and the severity of disobedience. The prince's gaze hardened, scanning the room like a hawk assessing prey. "Your actions could compromise the palace and the crown," William said, voice deliberate, echoing in the high-ceilinged study. "Explain your intentions." The aide swallowed, voice faltering, then admitted that the plan had been orchestrated to hide damaging correspondence, documents that could undermine public trust if revealed. Thomas listened, eyes unblinking, heart steady but mind racing. Every revelation increased the stakes. Every confession layered the danger. Every pause heightened the tension. The room seemed to shrink around them, the weight of secrecy pressing on every shoulder. Thomas adjusted his position subtly, ensuring that the hidden document remained secure. The aides, young and seasoned alike, now understood that they were observed, that their actions were recorded in the unwavering gaze of both the prince and the veteran guard. The shadows in the room no longer concealed. The subtle disturbances had escalated into a confrontation that demanded moral clarity, courage, and decisive action. Prince William's expression softened, though the tension remained palpable. The document stays here, he reiterated, voice firm. No one removes it, no one alters it, and we will uncover the full extent of this conspiracy. The crown's integrity depends on it. Thomas's presence reinforced the command. His years of vigilance were a silent promise that the order would be obeyed without resistance. The aides shifted uneasily, the young staff member trembling at the realization that they had been fully exposed and that the consequences of deception were immediate and unavoidable. A faint rustle from the side corridor drew Thomas's attention once more. The palace, though seemingly silent, contained countless potential threats, and he understood that the night was far from over. Each whisper of movement, each flicker of shadow, was a reminder that vigilance must never waver. He stepped slightly forward, a subtle yet unmistakable gesture signaling that any further attempts at interference would be met with immediate containment. The staff member, voice barely audible, finally revealed the full scope of their actions. Instructions had come from a higher authority within the palace, designed to protect a secret that, if exposed, could embarrass influential figures and damage the monarchy's reputation. Thomas's eyes narrowed. The conspiracy extended further than anticipated, reaching into corridors and offices he had not yet fully scanned. The hidden document was more than a threat. It was a key to unraveling a web of secrecy, deception, and potential betrayal. Prince William's gaze sharpened, voice controlled yet laced with authority. "We will act decisively," he said. "But first, the document must remain in this room, secure and unaltered. Any deviation will be considered an act against the crown itself." Thomas nodded, hand resting lightly but firmly on the folder, eyes sweeping the room for any sign of movement or intent. The aide's eyes flicked between the prince and the veteran guard, fully understanding that the balance of loyalty, authority, and moral duty was now in play. The hidden document, once a silent threat, now lay exposed in the center of the study, its presence a reminder of vulnerability, intrigue, and the stakes of loyalty. Thomas Hale, veteran guard, remained unwavering, a shield against both deception and potential harm. The confrontation had escalated, the conspiracy revealed in part, and the path forward was fraught with peril. Yet the guard's presence, steady, moral, and decisive, ensured that the crown remained defended, at least for now. The study remained tense, heavy with the weight of revealed secrets and the unspoken consequences of serious misjudgment. Thomas Hale stood motionless, a steady figure of authority and vigilance, his eyes fixed on the staff members whose actions had only partly come to light. The hidden document rested on the desk, illuminated by the warm glow of the lamps, every line and mark suggesting matters that required careful handling. Thomas's hand hovered near it, not to claim it, but to protect it, ensuring that no further interference could take place. Prince William, rigid and composed, stepped closer to the aides. "This document is not merely paper," he said, his voice firm but steady as it carried through the ornate study. "It contains information that requires careful handling and has implications that affect those who work within these walls. Its concealment is a serious issue. Do you understand the importance of this situation?" The staff members, pale and anxious, nodded quietly. The younger aide, who had first attempted to hide the folder, lowered their gaze, fully aware that the significance of their mistake reached far beyond their own immediate worry. Thomas's presence, silent yet commanding, reinforced the prince's authority. Every subtle gesture, every poised movement, conveyed that disobedience or impulsive action would not be tolerated. The aides instinctively understood that the veteran guard was the moral compass of the room, an unyielding force whose duty to protect both the crown and the family surpassed fear or intimidation. One wrong move now, and Thomas's disciplined intervention would prevent the consequences from spiraling beyond control. A faint rustle from the corridor reminded Thomas that the palace was never fully secure. Shadows lingered, doors remained unguarded, and secrecy thrived in the quietest corners. He glanced at the staff members once more, ensuring that no one attempted to flee or tamper with the evidence. The young aide, quivering under the scrutiny, finally spoke, voice barely audible. I didn't realize. I was told to move the papers, but I didn't know the full consequences. Thomas's gaze softened slightly, not in leniency, but in acknowledgement that fear had driven some of their choices. Yet moral accountability remained absolute. Prince William's eyes, sharp and unwavering, met Thomas's. There was unspoken acknowledgement between them. The veteran guard's vigilance had prevented the situation from spiraling into chaos, and his presence had ensured that the hidden document remained secure. The prince addressed the aides again, tone deliberate, authoritative. "Transparency is not optional," he said. "Your actions have consequences. The palace depends on loyalty and integrity, and you have compromised both. We will determine the necessary measures. But for now, the document remains here, untouched and fully protected." Thomas adjusted his stance, subtly repositioning himself between the aides and the desk. Every muscle in his body remained coiled, ready to respond if further disruption occurred. The hidden document, though momentarily safe, represented a vulnerability that could not be ignored. Thomas understood that even a single misstep or impulsive gesture could undo the careful control they had established. His eyes swept the room repeatedly, cataloging every shadow, every flicker of movement, every potential threat. From the far corner of the study, the older aide who had orchestrated the concealment strategy shifted uncomfortably. Thomas noticed the subtle twitch of their fingers and the barely perceptible tightening of their jaw. Their awareness of being fully observed, of having their actions exposed, brought both fear and hesitation. Thomas stepped slightly closer, voice calm but firm. "Remain where you are. Do not attempt further interference. Any action to remove, alter, or destroy this document will be considered a direct challenge to the crown itself." The aide froze, the gravity of his words sinking in, eyes wide with apprehension. Prince William, sensing the critical juncture, leaned forward over the desk. "We will investigate the full extent of this breach," he said. "Every action, every instruction, every concealed movement must be accounted for. The integrity of the palace and the trust of the royal family depends on it." Thomas's gaze remained unwavering, a silent reminder that the moral and physical responsibility for enforcing this directive rested squarely on him. The aides shifted uneasily, realizing that both authority and experience now aligned against any further deception. A sudden sound drew Thomas's attention, a subtle scuff, a barely perceptible shuffle from the corridor outside. His instincts snapped into heightened awareness. The palace, though quiet, held unseen observers, individuals who might attempt to intervene, manipulate, or retrieve the hidden document. Thomas's hand hovered lightly over the folder, poised to prevent any attempt at removal or tampering. Every detail mattered. A shadow, a movement, the faintest hint of intent. His vigilance was absolute. The young aide, trembling and pale, finally spoke again, voice shaking. "I understand now. I should have spoken sooner. There are others. Instructions. I didn't realize the danger." Thomas nodded subtly, aware that the admission was critical to uncovering the full extent of the conspiracy. Prince William's eyes remained fixed on the aide, measuring sincerity and fear. The room seemed to contract under the weight of revelation. Every particle of dust and flicker of light magnified by the intensity of the moment. Thomas, reading the situation with practiced precision, realized that immediate action was necessary to secure the palace further. "We will not allow this to continue unchecked," he said, voice calm but resolute. "The document remains here, under the protection of the crown and those entrusted to safeguard it. Any attempt to remove it, conceal it, or act against it will be met decisively." The aides' faces reflected a mixture of fear, shame, and dawning understanding. The veteran guard's authority was absolute, his vigilance uncompromising. Prince William's tone softened slightly, though the firmness remained. "You have endangered the crown, the family, and your colleagues," he said. "Actions have consequences. The investigation will be thorough, but for now, know this. The hidden document stays here, and it is fully protected." Thomas remained alert, eyes scanning the room, ensuring that no one attempted to defy the order. The tension, though momentarily eased, lingered like a heavy shadow. And then, from the corner of his eye, Thomas caught a subtle, almost imperceptible movement. A figure, partially obscured by shadows, retreated silently from the doorway. His pulse tightened. Whoever had been lurking beyond the study had observed the confrontation and might possess knowledge of the hidden document or the breach. The palace, though appearing calm, still held potential threats, individuals who could act in secrecy, driven by ambition, fear, or loyalty to another agenda. Thomas squared his shoulders, gaze sharp and unyielding. The hidden document remained secure, the immediate threat contained. But the palace itself was far from fully safe. The shadowed figure, the exposed staff member, and the unknown reach of the conspiracy ensured that vigilance, courage, and moral clarity would be required again. The night was not over, and the stakes for the crown, the royal family, and the integrity of the palace remained impossibly high. As the aides lowered their heads in acknowledgement, Thomas's eyes lingered on the doorway, alert for any sign of further disturbance. Prince William, standing tall and resolute, placed a hand lightly on the desk, a signal of both authority and cautious reassurance. The hidden document, though momentarily safe, was a reminder that loyalty, vigilance, and decisive action were the crown's most powerful defenses. The study fell silent once more, the flickering lamps casting long, shifting shadows across the walls. Thomas Hale remained vigilant, every sense attuned, ready to act at the first sign of further threat. The palace, magnificent and imposing, held secrets yet undiscovered, conspiracies yet unexposed, and shadows yet to reveal themselves. But one truth remained undeniable. The crown had a protector, unwavering, disciplined, and morally resolute. The hidden document had been secured, but the story and the palace's trials were far from over, and in the corridor beyond the study, the retreating shadow lingered, a silent promise that challenges, revelations, and dangers would emerge again. And Thomas Hale, veteran guard and steadfast sentinel, would be ready to confront them all.